Even though Yandy Smith had previously endured public humiliation, jail visits, and betrayals, nothing had prepared her for this. The cameras were rolling as she broke down in tears, gripping Mendeecees' phone and quivering as she read what Rasheeda supposedly sent, according to rumors circulating from the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set. Him. Not only were the communications amicable, but they were also malicious. According to reports, what began as mistrust turned into a very emotional and unfiltered moment. Filmmakers nearly halted production. There was more than one message, according to sources. It was a thread. A thread filled with flirtatious emoticons, messages, late-night check-ins, inside jokes, and according to sources, a screenshot that made Yandy mutter, "I trusted both of you." The betrayal slammed like a thunderclap. Yandy had always stated that Rasheeda was the one person she could call her sister. Mendy observes that he simply sat there motionless, as if he were unable to disclose the truth or lie quickly enough without making matters worse. There are rumors that someone on set leaked the details. Furthermore, people are now trying to figure out how a decade's close relationship and a marriage that was reconstructed after being incarcerated both began to fall apart over a few texts. However, it didn't end there. What came next? Messier. Still. When the actors were getting ready for another roundtable scenario in the studio loft on a calm Tuesday, it all began. Yandy had come early, looking put together in pants and a basic sweatshirt, drinking coffee and looking through her phone. It was meant to be a lighthearted scenario discussing forthcoming business decisions and who is working with whom. However, animosity had been rising for weeks behind the scenes. Subtle changes in actions, inexplicable looks, and uncomfortable times. Recently, Mendeecees had been preoccupied, always moving aside to answer calls, laughing at texts he never shared, and tilting his phone screen slightly so Yandy couldn't see it. She dismissed it at first. She was excessively worried about nothing since they had been through so much. However, she noticed Rasheeda's name flashing twice on the screen as his phone rang that morning. Her stomach constricted in less than 5 minutes. The incident wasn't the first. All of those innocuous exchanges between them then abruptly began to replay like a horrible film. She waited for him to go to the restroom before doing what she vowed never to do again. She took his phone. The passcode was still the same. What? Her stomach dropped when she saw it. It wasn't a casual message. Late at night, Rasheeda had texted a selfie. Personal enough, but not outrageous. Heart emoticons were used to giggle at internal jokes. Yandy scrolled up to discover a note that said, "You always make me feel seen." Weeks had passed during this time. At first, she didn't weep. She simply sat still. People began to arrive for the scene, cameras rolling, crew putting up the lights. Men returned grinning, utterly uninformed. And after years of honing his ability to keep it together, Yandy lost it. What are we doing now, then? Her voice broke through the room's commotion. Everybody froze. Confused, Mendeecees turned to face her. "What you talking about?" Still attempting to interpret her face, he asked. She raised his phone. "You and Rasheeda? How much time?" His expression fell. Rasheeda, who had just entered, seemed in disbelief. "What? Hold on," she replied, taking a step back. Yandy, however, was not observing her. Her angry and incredulous gaze were fixed on Mendeecees. "You said I was insane. I overthink everything, you said. You've been messaging her late at night as if I don't exist, and all this while you've been laughing at her jokes." She held the phone as if it had physically injured her, now trembling. Mendeecees made an effort to clarify. "We were only conversing. She contacted me regarding that incident." Yandy interrupted him. "It happened 3 weeks ago, and you two are still conversing? She calls you her piece and sends you images. Have you gone insane?" Rasheeda spoke in a shaky voice as she moved ahead. "Yandy, it wasn't like that. I swear. You." However, it was too late. The trust had broken. Among the makers, one attempted to intervene and inquired if they would want to take a break, but Yandy chose to ignore everyone. "For you, I went above and above. I had a lot of forgiveness. Additionally, you let her to play in my face. Her Voice broke. She tried to stop the tears that were now streaming down her cheeks as she sat down with her hands in her lap. In startled silence, the rest of the cast watched. Not even Kirk, who had just shown up with a bottle of water, said. Tenacious muttered something to Bambi, who gently shook her head, obviously uneasy with the intensity of the occasion. Mendeecees took a seat beside Yandy, but she got up right away. Keep your hands off of me. Don't keep quiet about me just yet. Both. She and you lied to me. Rasheeda herself was on the edge of tears. I didn't imply no danger. I assumed we were only buddies. Yandy, however, turned to face her with a glass-shattering expression. You were mistaken. My sister was intended to be you. Even though you were aware of our struggles and our survival, you still felt it was okay to send him such a text. Yandy has never been this way before. Not even when she and Mendeecees were at their worst. This was not like the others. This was a layer of treachery. Acquaintance. It wasn't an unfamiliar face. She sobbed with, made bread with, and stood up for both off-camera and on-camera. The cameras continued to roll even after producers signaled to stop. It turned out to be the most sad sequence we've ever shot, according to one crew member. Drama wasn't even involved. It was sorrow. The space had changed. Whatever this had previously been, rumors, suspicions, or changes in energy, it was now indisputable. The texts were not denied by Mendeecees. Rasheeda acknowledged that she had sent them. The most painful thing was that Yandy had to discover the truth on her own because none of them had told her. Eventually, with tears still streaming down her cheeks, she left the set. She didn't require assistance, but security followed her. She simply needed air. Back inside, there was silence for a good 2 minutes. Everyone seemed to have forgotten they were in a concert because of the oppressive hush. The stillness was finally broken by Carly Red. That was genuine, yo. Nobody answered. Yandy sat on the curb outside. Hoodie covered her head and wept softly. The audio was captured by a production assistant nearby, but the cameras were no longer on her. She said the same thing repeatedly. I had faith in both of them. I had faith in both of them. Inside, muttering something through trembling gasps, Rasheeda drew Kirk away. Kirk gave a hesitant, inscrutable nod. Scrappy approached and attempted to reassure men, but even he appeared uneasy, as though he was unable to justify what had just transpired. Bambi folded her arms and kept a close eye on Rasheeda. The women on the set had obviously established a silent jury of their own. Nobody was hurrying to protect her. Producers, meanwhile, gathered in a corner to discuss whether to remove or retain the video. According to reports, one of them stated, "The audience needs to see this. It's too real to cut. It's raw." And they weren't mistaken. Something changed in Yandy forever that day, and although most of the actors had previously sobbed on camera, nobody had ever sobbed with this level of depth. This type of public emotional breakdown, betrayal, and it had nothing to do with a guy straying, but rather with two individuals The fallout was just getting started, and Mendeecees slumped against the wall in the studio, avoiding eye contact with everyone. After the person she trusted the most decided that her boundaries didn't matter, he had lost all of his customary confidence, and Yandy's expression had changed from one of wrath to one of sadness. He continued playing back the past few minutes in his mind, and it always stung worse than anger, deep, piercing, paralyzing, disappointment. Nothing he said or cried or breathed would change this, and the worst part was that he was aware of it. Kirk's hands were shaking, while Rasheeda sat on the opposite side of the room, wiping her eyes with a tissue that someone from production had given her, stood still over her, his mouth clenched hard. Whatever they were talking about was in whispers, but Kirk's expression was horrified rather than supportive. No one could determine if it was astonishment or disappointment, but his enthusiasm made it obvious that this was not going to be a passing incident. Over. Scrappy was pacing slowly, and the rest of the cast was still apprehensive. It was too raw to interrupt, and Bambi was now sitting with her arms folded as Carly continued to watch the monitors as if she was waiting for someone to call cut, but no one did. The production team was at a loss for what to do. It was like witnessing a slow-motion car crash. You know it's awful, yet you can't take your eyes off it. When a female producer approached and knelt next to Yandy, who was still sitting on the Curb with her hood up and using the sleeves of her sweatshirt to wipe her face, she asked politely if she wanted to chat, but Yandy didn't immediately respond. "How long have they been laughing behind my back?" she questioned in a quiet voice, after staring out at the parking lot as if she was unable to feel her own body. The producer was unsure on how to. "We can stop filming for the day if you want," she offered, gently placing a hand on Yandy's shoulder without offering any explanations. "No, let them speak," Yandy said, shaking her head. "Show it to the world. Let the world see their true selves." "This ain't about y'all being friends," Kirk continued, finally breaking his quiet inside and addressing Rasheeda squarely. "This is what you created, and it doesn't look good." Rasheeda attempted to justify herself by claiming that she never crossed a boundary and that the texts weren't flirtatious. However, Kirk questioned her directly. "Have you ever called him your piece?" Rasheeda was unable to respond. Although her lips opened, no words emerged. "We all text each other, but we don't do heart emojis and late-night selfies," Bambi said, leaning forward and speaking sharply yet quietly. The atmosphere changed once again. "It's simple. You crossed a line." No one tried to console Rasheeda as new tears welled up in her eyes. Her quiet was too loud already. Mendeecees at last said anything. He spoke in a low voice, as if he wasn't sure if he should be speaking at all. "There was nothing romantic about it. We simply had a vibe. She's cool. She comes in. We discuss business. There was no affair." His statements just made matters worse, but he glanced around as though pleading with someone to believe him. Carly gave an eye roll. "If you don't stop, you'll be grooving with your wife's closest friend at 1 a.m. She didn't even complete her statement. She simply turned back to the TV and shook her head. At last, Scrappy took a seat and massaged his temples. "Now the entire atmosphere is gone. It was damaged by you all. This was meant to be a lighthearted scenario. At this point, there are betrayals, tears, and individuals who appear to be strangers." Another producer approached Yandy in the corridor and said in a whisper that Rasheeda wanted to speak. Yandy remained still. She didn't flinch. "Why?" "So she can tell me it wasn't personal." "It was personal," she answered. He made her feel seen the moment she spoke. Yandy got up slowly, wiped her face once again, and replied, "I'll go." After the producer hesitated and added, "They're asking if you'll come back in." The air thickened once again as she returned to the room. "I want them to hear how they broke me," she said, "but not to make peace." Everyone froze. Silently, the cameras moved as well, fearing to interfere with the impending event. Yandy didn't yell out. Nothing was thrown by her. She simply moved to the middle of the room and gave them both a glance. She continued, saying, "I'm angry because you knew what I had been through and yet chose to text me, not because you texted." She turned to Rasheeda and said, "Both of you, play in my face. You gave me a call. I offered you counsel when Kirk mistreated you, sister, and you sobbed in my arms over your marriage." Rasheeda's eyes filled with tears once more. "And the entire time you were out here telling my husband he makes you feel safe." "That's not how I meant it," Yandy continued. "Then, how did you mean it? You mentioned that you miss him. You said, wanting more men to be like him." "Don't judge me, I'm comfy," you wrote as you sent that photo of yourself in your robe. Apart from the faint sound of Rasheeda sobbing and someone's microphone picking up their tremulous breaths, the room remained silent. The workers even ceased adjusting the lights. Nobody made a move. Next, Yandy looked at Mendeecees. "How about you? You allowed her to feel that after everything. Cozy. You made her think it was all right. It wasn't shut down by you. You entertained it. I'm the crazy one now because I reacted." Mendeecees remained silent. Nothing. He lowered his head. He had his hands clasped, and he seemed embarrassed for the first time. Yandy held up her hand before Rasheeda could finish her sentence. "Don't. Simply don't. It's a new low. Furthermore, I don't think one of you realizes how deeply you hurt me. What I witnessed cannot be undone. Those texts cannot be unread by me, and I can't get over how isolated I feel at the moment." She turned and left once again. No one followed her this time. Suddenly, the energy in the room was cut in two. What was meant to be? What had started out as simply another day of production had devolved into the most intense emotional collapse the group had seen in years. Nobody gave a clap. Nobody made a joke. And the majority of them understood in their hearts that this would not simply go away. Everything was going to change because of this. Nobody was aware of where to proceed from here. When Yandy left the room again, the stillness she left behind seemed oppressive rather than merely uncomfortable. Mendeecees sat quietly. Rasheeda had stopped sobbing, but her expression was frozen in the expression individuals get when they realize they made a mistake and cannot undo it. Concerned about whether to continue filming or take a break, the producers whispered to one another. However, even a rest wouldn't resolve the recent events. This was no longer plot drama. It was a personal matter. Yandy sat with her knees pulled to her chest in a corner of the corridor. She shook her head when a production assistant handed her water. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. Texts and calls, most likely from fans or friends, are already learning about what occurred. She never even looked at it. I protected her, she said to herself as she sat there. They both turned around and made fun of me on television after I defended him. Kirk eventually broke the stillness once again inside. This is the same woman who stood up for you when you and I were going through it, he continued, turning to Rasheeda. You were crying on her shoulder and telling her that she was your ride or die, and now you have her out here looking foolish over some messages that you could have blocked. Rasheeda remained silent. Kirk gave a headshake. You ought to have been more aware. Bambi glanced at Scrappy and said, This whole thing is nasty, like really disgusting, and not just the kind of dirty you see on reality TV. It feels like a true betrayal, Scrappy said, nodding. It no longer even feels like a scenario. We felt as though we were at a funeral. The team started moving cameras about, taking close-ups and reaction pictures. It didn't seem contrived. Nobody was playing. Carly was eerily silent, even though she normally leaped into drama for screen time. She was seeing Rasheeda with judgment rather than sympathy. Severe judgment. After a few minutes, Yandy returned, this time to get her luggage rather than to join the group. She avoided eye contact, just entered, gathered her belongings, and turned to go again without saying anything. But she stopped just short of the door. Like gravity, the stillness drew her back. Did you ever consider how this would make me look? You knew we were filming. You knew people would see this, she added, carefully turning around and glancing directly at Rasheeda. Rasheeda eventually said, her voice barely above a whisper, You knew I already get dragged for sticking by him, and now you add this. I had no intention of hurting you. It was foolish. I felt alone. Kirk and I haven't been getting along for a while, and you simply become weary of being invisible. Mendeecees pays attention. He is not a judge. I also caught up. I promise that I do not wish to take him away from you. Yandy laughed. Grab him? You couldn't care less, girl. Something I did. I've already given it my all. Years, trips, and raising. Children by yourself. What do you think about a man? No, loyalty is the key. You also broke it. Some of the actors began to cry. It was too authentic. Everyone was moved by Yandy's voice cracking as she mentioned loyalty. Even the producers were emotional. To wipe his tears, one of the cameramen silently turned his head aside. At last, Mendy got up and approached Yandy. She instantly stepped back. No, don't. Not at this moment. Don't remain silent. After giving a long nod, he continued. You're correct. I have something to say. Not yet. Yandy stared at him, her face expressionless. I need to fix it, but I don't even know where to start. Perhaps you don't. Rasheeda moved forward once more. Yandy raised her hand once more. May I say one more thing? Don't. I've heard enough. It hurts worse the more you talk. The executive producer didn't typically intervene in scenes, but this one was going so badly wrong that even Mona Scott, who was watching from the upstairs monitor room, seemed concerned. Let me preserve what little peace I still had. Did they really not see this coming? She asked her assistant. Did they believe that they were being cunning? The helper muttered. There were some indications, but nothing like this. Not till now. Slowly, Mona nodded. Even while she was aware that this event would go viral, she had no idea how it would affect Yandy's actual life. Later that day, footage of the altercation leaked, just uncut audio, no graphics. It was captured on a phone by someone on site, and it became viral online. Began pouring love and support into Yandy's social media accounts, with many commenting that they had always believed something was wrong between Rasheeda and Mendeecees, but never imagined it would be revealed on camera in this way. "I'm sobbing with you, Yandy. You deserve so much better than for Rasheeda to call him her piece. Even your sisters are monitoring your lover, and that's crazy. That's why I don't trust anyone." Then there were the videos of Yandy leaving crying on her face. Within hours, it was featured on several blogs. Shade Room, Baller Alert. After discovering her husband and closest friend secretly messaging, Yandy breaks down. The headlines were harsh. Hollywood opened. Mendeecees receives emotional retribution as Yandy leaves the stage crying, and Rasheeda is caught in the midst of the season's messiest betrayal. The harm had gone public, and there was no taking back. Kirk was now caught in the middle as well, and fans started berating him for not doing more. He gave a hazy. Rasheeda remained silent on social media, not even posting a story, as if she understood that whatever she said would just exacerbate the situation. He made a statement claiming that he was focused on his family and his recovery, but it didn't help much. In contrast, Yandy uploaded a dark screen with the caption, "Forgiveness doesn't come just because you say sorry." Within a day, the post had over 200,000 likes. Everyone had an opinion, including influencers, reality stars, and celebrities, and the comments were swamped with checkmarks. Producers returned to the studio and decided to halt production for the remainder of the day. Even Scrappy acknowledged, in his confessional that evening, that the energy was broken and there was no way to recover. "I've seen some crazy things on this show, but this was heartache tonight, dude." There was no narrative twist. This was someone's actual suffering, and it struck a different chord. Nobody could predict what the following day would bring. I knew. Thing was certain, though. Yandy would not tolerate this in silence. She had said the truth. The world had chosen a side after she had bled in front of the camera. The vibe on set was entirely different the following morning. The lights were dimmed, people were speaking in low tones, and the tension in the air was palpable, like static. The majority of the group had not slept well, and they arrived in hoodies, sunglasses, and silent expressions. There were no embraces, no welcomes, and no rumors. Nobody wanted to be the first to bring it up, but everyone knew what today was going to be about. No talking about clothes or who was late, just stillness. Even the makeup chairs were quieter than normal. Her car was seen outside, but Yandy had not verified whether she was returning, and no one, not even the producers, had heard from her personally. When she eventually entered at 10 a.m., she didn't need to say anything because everyone understood why she was there. It was to complete what had been begun, not to put things right. She crossed her legs and sat down on the couch. A producer leaned in to ask if she needed anything, and she responded coolly, "Just make sure you record all of it," as if she were conserving her energy. "Don't interrupt me. Don't intervene. Play it." Rasheeda and Mendeecees were already sitting, in the main scene area. Kirk hadn't arrived, and neither had Bambi. Scrappy was present, but he was standing out to the side, as if he wished he hadn't. Carly arrived late and took a seat slowly, as if she were getting ready for a funeral. Though not as explosive as the previous day, the atmosphere was thick once more, and it seemed as though everyone was simply anticipating who would fold first. When the cameras began to film, Yandy turned to face them both, her eyes clear of tears, and her voice was composed. "I had all night to reflect," she remarked, almost too calm, "and I came to a realization. I've made the mistake of expecting everyone to treat me the same way I treat them, but I do demand honesty." Mendeecees kept his head down, while Rasheeda sat there chewing her lip as if she wanted to say something. "But you guys couldn't even offer me that." Yandy went on, "For years, I've watched individuals on this program lie, cheat, and act dirty. I always believed that I and we were above it. However, I suppose the camera is honest. It gave me all the information I required." At last, Mendeecees said something. It was stupid and never went past those texts, I promise on everything that I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Yandy agreed. It was careless, but it wasn't real. Not to me. You don't get to choose how deep the wound feels, but it was genuine enough for her to be brave with it, even if it might not have been real to you. I'm not trying to play victim.